mit der Akzeptanz der 4 Grundfreiheiten und dazu gehört auch die Freizügigkeit der Personen. Brexit means Brexit.
Hello and welcome to another Brexitometer brought to you by the Martin Centre. I'm Angelos and I'm joining you from King's College London for what will be a special Easter episode. Spring has finally come and with it a breakthrough in Brexit negotiations. We now have a transition agreement after the March European Council and more certainty that there will be no hard Brexit. But underneath the euphoria there are some strange, toxic questions lurking for the future. Has Theresa May made herself a target for the Eurosceptic wing of her party by capitulating to all EU demands? Is the poisoning of an ex-Russian spy in London going to bring the UK closer to the EU? Did the Leave campaign in the 2016 referendum benefit from Cambridge Analytica's shady practices with Facebook data? Stay with us because as the day of Brexit approaches, the plot thickens and the stakes rise. This year's Easter basket is full of unexpected gifts of strange substance and smells, and Brexitometer is here to make sense of it all. First, to the agreement, the transition agreement that the EU and the UK reached at the end of March. You have many questions about this. It's understandable. It's the key development with regards to Brexit. Now let's get going to some of the key points. So the main thing is that there will be a transition period until the end of 2020. In practice, this means that while the UK formally exits in March 2019, little will change for 21 months thereafter. The UK will remain a member of the EU, minus of course the quite trivial point that it will not be able to shape any new rules and regulations during this period. A key concession by the EU was that in the transition period the UK will be able to negotiate its own trade deals. It was a key demand, it will be a key symbol for the British government to show that it is finally free to do as it wishes in the international stage. But at the same time, EU citizens coming to the UK during the transition period will enjoy the same rights as EU citizens that already live in the UK. Quite crucially, when it comes to Ireland, it still remains a very tricky point. You have asked about this. The agreement they have until now is to basically keep looking at the topic. Both sides are committed to avoiding a hard border issue in Ireland. Key, though, is that the UK has finally agreed to the default solution that the EU has proposed, which is that absent any other solutions, Northern Ireland will essentially remain part of the customs union. So as far as Northern Ireland is concerned, it may actually de facto remain under EU rules for much longer than after the transition period as well. Now this theoretically means that the two sides can now focus on agreeing a future trade relationship and they can have a quiet Easter break. But is everyone in London happy? Not quite. Theresa May essentially capitulated on all EU requests. The UK will remain bound by EU laws for 21 months and they will not be able to influence them. And Northern Ireland may end up as being more a part of the EU than part of the UK in the future. And it's quite important to remember, this transitional agreement will only enter into force if the two sides agree on a final Brexit agreement by the end of the year. Nothing is certain until then, and Theresa May must always deal with the objections of Brexiteers who do not like the fact that for 21 months after Brexit, the UK will be subject to EU laws. And they actually protested it. Nigel Farage and a few other Brexiteers went to the River Thames and they threw dead fish in the water to protest the fact that the UK will be subject to the EU common and fishery policies. So the fishy smell of hard Brexit will continue to haunt Theresa May and the EU as they negotiate the future relationship. Now, the smell of dead fish is one thing. The smell of Russian poison is quite different. So there was a different toxic smell over London in the last few weeks, and it's probably the smell of the nerve agent that poisoned Sergei Skripal, an ex-Russian spy and double agent who is now fighting for his life with his daughter in a London hospital. Was Russian Vladimir Putin behind this attack? The British government is certain about it, and the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson even compared the upcoming FIFA World Cup in Russia with Hitler's 1936 Olympics. How does this impact Brexit, you may ask? The question here is, can this attack actually convince the British public, and the British public care a lot, this attack is in all front page news, all newspapers. So can this attack convince the British public that staying close to the EU is a good thing after all? Theresa May actually spent more time discussing the Russian attack with her EU colleagues in the March EU Council than Brexit, because she suddenly realized that the EU offers the opportunity for the British voice to be heard louder, particularly when dealing with a difficult opponent such as Vladimir Putin and Russia. At the same time, however, the British noticed that it took the EU quite some time to agree on a common condemnation of the attack, of the chemical attack in London, and to actually accuse Russia for it. So the British public realized again that the EU has quite different opinions on how to deal with Russia, and it requires a lot of convincing to agree on a common statement of condemnation against Russia. Now, with Russia now being public enemy number one in the UK, will Brexit Britain realize that it has no better ally than the EU, or will the soft attitudes of some EU member states towards Russia be an ammunition for Brexiteers who will be able to show, see, actually the UK can do it better on its own, it does not have to rely on the EU. One important dimension of this for EU policy is that how the EU deals with Russia in the immediate future may actually come to play a big role in what kind of Brexit we end up with in the end. Simply put, a firm position by the EU towards Russia may be a very, very good argument for people inside the UK who want to show that staying close to the EU is a very good thing for Britain moving forward. Finally, toxic Easter is promising to become even more toxic, as revelations about the role of Cambridge Analytica in using Facebook data to manipulate elections around the world appear in the British press. Now remember, Cambridge Analytica is a London-based company. Reports suggest that Cambridge Analytica played a role in the Trump campaign. There's a huge breach of trust and suspicion about the role of Facebook. If you're watching us on Facebook, we're gonna still keep using Facebook for the time being. But Mark Zuckerberg, however much you apologize, we're watching you as much as you're watching us. Now, does this all mean that the referendum result can actually be reversed? Not really. Opinion polling still shows that British public opinion is more or less at peace with the fact that the UK will have to leave the EU. The will of the people is still a very strong moral argument. Most British people accept that the referendum result is what it is, but it still goes to show that unexpected events, the decisions of people we have never heard of before, such as those whistleblowers, they can all impact the course of British politics. They can all impact the course of the negotiations. The Cambridge Analytica revelations may not have a direct effect on Brexit. It is probably happening. The EU and the UK will continue negotiating with each other, but still the political climate in London remains quite noxious. It's still quite toxic. So the government will have to deal with these revelations as it moves forward. If anything, we're just still reminded that as procedures go in place, as negotiations go in place, as rules and regulations are being put in place, humans matter, human decisions matter, and in the age of social media, the unexpected can always happen. So this was the end of this Easter Brexitometer. Our Easter bunny has brought us some good news with the transition agreement, but there are some strange smell coming out of the basket with those Easter eggs. Is it the smell of the dead fish that Nigel Farage threw in the Thames, and the smell of the hard Brexit wing of the Conservative Party who don't like where the negotiations are going? Is it the smell of Russian poison that is circulating in London? Or is it the smell of online data manipulation in the Leave campaign and in democratic politics all over the Western world? Whatever it is, the current calm in the Brexit negotiations will not last long. The next steps will be incredibly sensitive for the May government, as it hopes to agree on a common framework for the future and some solutions for Ireland by June, and then have a more specific agreement in place by October. So there are next steps coming up, and the Brexitometer will of course be there to guide you through them. Until our next meeting, don't forget that you can always send me your questions on everything Brexit related. Under this video, you can comment on this video with your questions, and you can also use social media. Yes, we will continue using Facebook for the time being, also Twitter and Instagram, using the hashtag Brexitometer. Until then, take care.
Mit der Akzeptanz der vier Grundfreiheiten und dazu gehört auch die Freizügigkeit der Person. Brexit means Brexit.